Universal, and thank you for tuning in to Fright Night Radio. We love to bring you stories of fright every Friday night. Stories that are creepy, suspenseful, and most of all, frightful.
Troglodytes. It was late night when I came home to find a troglodyte in my shower. I was returning from a riotous night at the full moon drum circle with a hot little earth goddess in tow when I heard the water running in my bathroom.
You hear that?
I asked the goddess. Her name was Abby, Absinthe, something like that. She had feathers in her hair and a voice like bird song.
Somebody taking a shower. Hey, what do you got to drink?
Taking a shower, my ass. I live alone.
Maybe you loaned your key.
No, I did not loan my key.
No need to shout.
Yes, there is a need to shout. I have a fucking intruder.
So what, somebody broke into your house to take a shower? Who would do such a thing?
Now that was a damn good question, to which I had no answer. I looked around and saw that my intruder had rearranged things in my house. It wasn't ransacked so much as neatened and organized, and my poster of that hot chick from The Fifth Element had been taken down and replaced with a framed painting of some street corner in Paris.
What the... It's probably just your troglodyte.
Trogalo what? Abby Abigail Absinthe fluttered about my house in search of a beverage while I stood by the bathroom door, nonplussed. After a few seconds, I called out, "Hello? Hello? Who's in there?" No answer. Heart pounding, I rapped on the door, but still nada. Abby came back with a bottle of JD in hand.
Hey, you got another woman in there?
No, I muttered. You're the only woman in my life. My next door pounding was answered with a loud, low grumbling. I tried to call out again, only my throat had dried up, but I'm no coward. I gripped the doorknob, turned it slowly, and pushed. Hot, steamy air enveloped me as I stepped into the dark bathroom. The water was gushing full blast. Regaining my voice, I called, "What the hell?" Again, that low grunting sound.
It's just your trog. Are we gonna party some more? Or what?
Now, with my adrenals really pumping, I screamed at her to just shut the fuck up already with that troglodyte nonsense and let me deal with the situation. She squawked something back concerning unnatural acts I could perform upon myself, then stomped out of my house and out of my life. And hell with her. I kicked the bathroom door wide and flicked on the light. Immediately, the shower stopped, and a sound like the trumpeting of a bull elephant blasted from the stall. Through the semi-transparent shower door moved a squat, gray figure that immediately flooded my brain with visions of grainy Bigfoot photos. Something like a scream escaped my throat, answered by another trumpeting from the shower. I stumbled backward, slammed the door, and dove for my cordless phone. I babbled something about a burglar to the 911 dispatcher, who instructed me to leave the house, but my adrenaline was still coursing. So, phone in hand, I stalked to the kitchen, armed myself with a brutal-looking knife, and informed the dispatcher that I wasn't going any damn where. So, he had best just send some cops over pronto. It was my house, my bathroom, not Bigfoot's. I returned to the bathroom, phone in one hand and knife death-gripped in the other, shouting, cursing, brandishing the knife, and kicking the door. I was distinctly aware of the 911 operator still attempting to talk sense to me. I charged back into the bathroom. And that's when I got my first good look at a troglodyte. Definitely humanoid with a short, stocky body, tree stump legs, giant feet, and hefty arms sporting catcher mitt hands. Its head, body, and limbs were slabbed over with a leathery gray hide. Imagine a squished-down version of Refrigerator Perry covered with modeling clay. Blazing red orbs peered at me from deeply recessed sockets. I stopped carrying on long enough to take in the sight of this creature stepping from my shower, then raised my knife high. The Trog reared back, and one of its flailing arms smashed through the glass shower door. It gushed blood as red as my own. Looking at its bleeding arm, it trumpeted again, and then reached out one massive hand. I gasped. I waved the knife. The massive hand closed on a towel, which it then wrapped around the wound. The cops had indeed come pronto, and having heard the commotion, broke right in with weapons drawn. They looked at me, looked at the troglodyte, sized up the situation, and "Drop the knife, sir," said the first cop. But, I pointed the knife at the monster standing in my bathroom. "Drop it," said the second cop. Not bad looking lady. Her name tag read Carson. I let the knife clatter to the floor, and they holstered their weapons. "There's a monster in my home," I said. It seemed stupid to state the obvious, but they didn't appear to even notice. "Sir," said Officer Carson, "that's just your troglodyte. Been drinking a bit tonight, have we?" A hand went down to the pair of cuffs at her ample hip. "Well, yeah, but..." They radioed HQ that all was clear, while I stood there dumbfounded. The troglodyte disappeared to another part of the house. My house, not its house, as I tried to explain to the officers, but they just shook their heads and told me to sleep it off, that I'd see everything differently in the morning. "Now, get a hold of yourself, sir, unless you want me to put the cuffs on you," said Officer Carson, her hand once again fingering the metal rings at her hip. No, I said. "Not tonight. Maybe another time?" "Go to bed, sir," both officers ordered. "Sleep it off." And they left. "That's just your troglodyte," she had said, as if trogs were as commonplace as toasters. Just your troglodyte. Amazingly, I was able to sleep. It took a while. I thought about the troglodyte for a long time. Then I thought about Abby Abyssinian absinthe. Then I drifted off thinking about Officer Carson and her, handcuffs. The troglodyte kept its distance throughout the next night and morning. I had feared some sort of retaliation, but that was not the case. As I sat in my kitchen the next morning, 2 in the afternoon, the Trog came by, scrambled some eggs, and brewed coffee. He, somehow the Trog seemed like a he, wore a black hooded robe and dark sunglasses, giving him the look of an ancient, venerable monk. When he handed me a cup of java, I glanced in the loose sleeve of his robe. His arm was wrapped in a bandage, which was starting to stain crimson. I looked into the Trog's deep eyes. I felt ashamed. I hate that feeling. I prefer anger. Things in my house were a bit different from before. For one thing, everything was cleaner, neater, and more expensive. Not ritzy, just a bit nicer. Instead of my old Mr. Coffee, now I had one of those fancy, schmancy cappuccino thingies. That was sweet. But on the downside, whatever happened to my poster of that hot redhead from The Fifth Element, huh? All through my house, everything was the same, but different. Then, of course, I had this silent housemate that just happened to be of an alien species. I went outside, and my neighborhood was also the same but different. No dramatic changes, but minor variations in shape, color, size. Like my neighbor's bird bath. It was big, pink, and shaped like a clamshell, instead of small, brown, and bowl-shaped. My mind reeled off and dismissed scads of explanations. Somebody was playing a prank on me. Now, too elaborate. I was hallucinating. No, I was too clear-headed after my morning coffee. I had an alter ego who... No, and no. While I stood on my front porch mulling it over, my phone rang. I ran in, snatched it up. "Yeah?"
Well, good afternoon to you, too.
Came a familiar dulcet voice. Abby?
The one and only.
What do you want?
What do I want? Not quite the zenith of civility, but an improvement over shut the fuck up.
The fuck are you talking about?
I'm actually wondering something about last night.
Yeah. Well, I'm wondering why my house is all different and the neighborhood's all different and why I've suddenly got this weird creature for a roommate. I grunted and plopped down in my recliner. Silently, my trog came by with a fresh cup of joe. I could get used to this.
Something happened last night.
Said Abby. No, I said. You stomped out before anything could happen.
No, I mean something really strange just before we met.
She was right, and it hit me what she meant. Back at the drum circle, I had wandered from the main crowd. Scratch that. I was running off to find a private place to yak. But anyway, I came upon a shimmering ring of light that just happened to be in my path. I ran through it just as somebody else was running through it the other way. That somebody else looked very much like yours truly, but when I looked back, the ring of light was gone, and so was my evil twin. And a girl with feathers in her hair was walking toward me. Yeah, I said to Abby. I saw another me, and this weird light. Do you think I stumbled into the Twilight Zone or something?
Do you believe in alternate universes?
Yeah, I do, I said, but it was just an automatic response. Whenever a hot babe asks if I believe in something bizarre like astrology or unicorns' crystals, I say yes. Then she'll go, oh, me too, and then we'll have a cosmic connection, huh? Bottom line, I believe whatever will get me laid.
Well, that's what I think happened. A portal opened and you switched places with your double from another universe. And apparently you don't have troglodytes in your world. Isn't that bizarre?
It didn't take me long to figure out that, yeah, Abby Absinthe was spot on, and I'd somehow slipped into the universe next door. There were lots of little differences, but the only major change I could tell was the existence of the troglodytes. The next few days were enlightening. When the trog had fixed breakfast, I assumed he was maybe some kind of personal valet. Maybe he would have my meals ready when I returned home in the evenings, do my laundry, things like that. Such was not the case. Sometimes he cooked, but other times I cooked. He washed his own cloaks, of which he had several, but not my clothes. He did not speak, but as the shock of the shower incident wore off, a great deal of non-verbal communication flowed between us. We had different tastes in television programs, but somehow compromises were made quickly and to our mutual satisfaction. The trog was an excellent chef, and when it was his turn to cook, he always seemed to know exactly what I wanted. I had friends over, but nobody seemed the least bit surprised to see the trog. It seemed customary to smile and nod at a trog, then go about your business. So when I visited friends, I would smile and nod at their trogs, and then go about my business. My alternate world friends were pretty much the same as my old friends, albeit slightly better dressed. Observations and discreet questions revealed that, 1. Almost every household had at least one trog. 2. Trogs had always been around, even though I personally had no such memory. 3. Nobody paid much attention to trogs. And 4. Nobody seemed to know where they came from, or anything else about them, nor did anybody seem to find that fact strange. In fact, everyone seemed devoid of curiosity about this whole other species sharing the planet alongside humankind. They were as commonplace as kitchen sinks or toasters. They were ubiquitous, but largely ignored. They appeared as minor references in books and as background props on television shows, but never as major characters. In one episode of Seinfeld, Kramer cultivated the habit of blaming everything on the troglodyte in his apartment. "The trog did it, I tell ya!" he exclaims several times during the show, while Jerry groans and Elaine pulls her hair out and growls. I sat in front of my TV for hours on end as part of my troglodyte research. Lucille Ball hid from Mr. Mooney behind a trog. Groucho Marx grabbed the hand of the trog, stuck one of its fingers in his ear, and said, "What's that you say? I can't hear you. I got a troglodyte in my ear." A vexed skipper chased poor Gilligan around and around an island trog. And John Wayne shoved his way past a troglodyte in his rush to go kill him some bad guys. Troglodytes are depicted in prehistoric cave paintings and in the wonderful, magical world of Dr. Seuss. Would you eat them in the fog? Would you eat them with a trog? Trogs inhabited merry oldie England, as reported by Miss Jane Austen. Upon hearing such distressing news concerning the lady, whom we had always considered to be of the amiable sort, we each of us fell to being as quiet as the troglodyte. On TV, in books, in the world around me, trogs everywhere, coexisting with us, but only tangentially interacting. This was not the world I knew before that full moon April night. I wondered if my alternate self found my no troglodyte universe just as strange. Did he miss the trogs? Did he like my Fifth Element poster? Troglodytes often go for walks, especially on dreary, overcast evenings. From time to time, I'd read a newspaper account of a trog saving somebody's life by lifting a car or some such thing, but even these heroic deeds were barely acknowledged. The trogs seemed to be regarded as nothing more than natural phenomena, like wind. I did a Google search on a lark. I typed troglodyte and murder in the search engine, but came up with nothing. Troglodyte and crime yielded the same, nada. As far as I could tell, trogs never hurt people, and people never hurt trogs. Except, I thought with the sickening horror, except me. That first night, in this odd universe when I startled my trog into cutting himself on the shower door, was I the first person ever to harm a troglodyte? Maybe, but that was nothing compared to what I was about to do. Not that I knew it then, but I was destined to upset everything about the human-trog relationship and throw the world into upheaval. Yay me. A week after my arrival in this trog-inhabited universe, I sat at my kitchen table trying to wake up. My trog, I had come to think of him as my trog, handed me a cup of coffee. I thanked him, I took a sip, musing about what to do that day and how to scrape together a few bucks. I do odd jobs for a living, little of this, little of that. Patch a roof here, build a porch there, that sort of thing. I managed to pay the bills, put gas in the Babe-mobile, and... Okay, so it's a Honda Civic in both universes, and buy Rolling Rock. I happened to glance up from my musings and, without really thinking, asked, "So, how's the arm?" "It's quite well healed. Thank you for asking, Larry," he replied. I almost dropped the coffee in my lap as I gawked. The trog's voice was a pleasant basso profundo. You can talk?" "Obviously," he said. Then he took a sip of coffee, gazed off into space, and regained his taciturn demeanor. "Why haven't you said anything before?" "No need to." "Well, I have a lot of questions for you, buddy." He sipped his coffee. "And you're going to answer them, damn it," He said nothing. I shot from sleepy and apathetic to being wide awake and furious in a split second. I get like that sometimes. Suddenly mad for no particular reason, except that it damn well suits me. I shot off my list of questions. Things like, why did Trogs just ghost about the world, not saying boo to anyone? Why did everyone just ignore them? Were they as dumb as rocks or as smart as Einstein? And why should we humans foot the bill for their food, coffee, and shelter? After my barrage of inquiries, my troglodyte smiled and drank his coffee.
Sorry, Larry. No comment.
I saw red. For 1 second, I literally saw red. This creature, sitting in my kitchen drinking my coffee, was refusing to answer my questions? I was up and screaming, demanding, going off on a tirade. This kind of fury was a bit extreme even for me, but it sort of made sense. I think the whole weirdness of switching universes was catching up to me. And then there was the oogie feeling that came with knowing that my friends in this universe were not the people I had known before, but mere alternate versions. My home was not my home, but a replica without my favorite poster at that. And more than that was a basic, unsolved mystery I had been wrestling with. Why was this universe so similar to mine? I mean, here was a whole nother species sharing the planet, but it didn't seem to make one whit of difference. This Earth and all its history was basically the same as the world I came from. The buildings were mostly the same. The TV shows were the same, but with a few trogs thrown in. And my friends were the same. How could these cohabitants, these troglodytes, these aliens, not make a difference? And now all those oddities had caught up with me and sent me on a rant. Then, a perverse inspiration struck, and I acted so quickly as to shock even myself. In my cutlery rack are several sharp knives, including the one I waved about on my first night in this strange universe. This time, I went for one with a long, serrated edge. It's a wicked piece of work, but my trog seemed more puzzled than worried as I slid it from the slot. Even through the anger and adrenaline, it hurt as I dragged the blade across my upper arm, slicing deeper into the bicep than I had meant to. But I managed to do it, and looked to my trog for a reaction. He eyed me curiously and continued to sip coffee, French roast. But his hand was shaking. I danced about the kitchen in agony.
Tell me!
I screamed, letting the blood drip onto my kitchen table. Then I poised the knife over my gut.
Tell me, or my blood will be on your hands.
It was all drama on my part. Yes, I was basically throwing a tantrum. But the trog and the whole universe-switching situation ticked me off. And there were questions I wanted answered. Actually, there were a lot of questions I don't have the answers to, but never bother to find out. Like, how does a microwave oven work? I haven't the foggiest. Don't care, but this was bothering me. This whole trog mystery was bugging the crap right out of me. The trog stood.
Stay where you are!
I screamed.
I was merely going to get you a bandage. You're dripping blood everywhere.
I glared at it.
Please, Larry, put the knife down and conduct yourself in a civilized manner. I will answer your questions. Where would you like me to start?
Oh! Okay. Begin with your name.
His name was 𝐥𝐤𝐤, and he'd been alive since the time of Jesus. His kind had been on this alternate universe Earth since the late Cretaceous era. His early ancestors lived in deep subterranean caverns, measuring time in the same way water wears away stone. They had no natural enemies. There were animals larger than they, but few ventured into the recesses in which they dwelt.
And my ancestors harmed nothing,
said 𝐿𝐺𝐵 in a my species is better than your species tone of voice.
They fed on plants, mushrooms, and fish from underground streams.
Fish have feelings, I grumbled. Did your goody two-shoes ancestors ever think about that? 𝐿𝐺𝐵 rolled his eyes and explained that his ancestors dabbled in the use of tools long enough to evolve into upright walking bipeds with opposable thumbs and highly convoluted cerebrums. Then they developed telepathy, lived their lives in a sort of group mind, and had little use for advancing their technology further than a few crude implements. You're telepathic? I asked.
Among ourselves, mostly.
They thrived until humans came along and routed them from their caves. Humans and Trogs were at war?
More like a massacre,
𝐿𝐺𝐵 said.
We really are a species incapable of harming other sentient beings. Even fish, we kill quickly and humanely, out of consideration for their feelings. We would not fight back against the humans. So they butchered us.
But some Troglodytes survived,
Obviously,
he said, and his eyes seemed deeper than ever, as if he were peering into the far distant past.
Our survival has to do with how we measure time. Most survival traits are relatively short-term ventures. Teeth, claws, the use of clubs. They will get you by over a millennium or two. Intelligence serves a purpose, but it's not the survival trait it's cracked up to be. We have something more subtle and long-term.
He paused, probably for dramatic effect. I was just about to prompt him to tell me what this other fancy-schmancy survival trait was when the phone rang. It was my friend Mark. I told Mark I was busy having a conversation with my troglodyte and I'd have to call him back. I hung up while he was still laughing his ass off. 𝐿𝐺𝐵 went on.
You see, we exert a gentle influence on the consciousness of other species. We do not control minds, but we do guide them. Over a century or two, this influence is minimal. But over a millennium, an epoch, an eon, it adds up.
Adds up to what? All you've done that I can see is make yourselves invisible. Or the next thing to it.
What better survival strategy could one ask for than invisibility? We've conditioned your kind to disregard us. No human notices us. And certainly no human ever so much as raises a voice at a trog. It would be like shouting at your carpet. It's just not done. So you can imagine the surprise I had that night when you interrupted my shower, screaming like some kind of maniac.
Maniac? I said. Me?
Would you rather I called you a little sissy girl?
𝐿𝐺𝐵 rumbled, the corners of his mouth rising ever so slightly. It suddenly dawned on me just what 𝐿𝐵 had been getting at, and my temper flared again. I pounded the table so hard our coffee cups jumped, spilling Java all over the place. You've hypnotized the whole human race. You've put all our minds to sleep.
Only the part that would destroy us,
𝐿𝐵 said, raising his voice for the first time. That's the most devious, sneaky, underhanded treachery I've ever heard. So while you sit around watching our televisions and drinking our coffee, you've been burrowing into our heads and messing with our minds? You've been around since the dawn of time, but you haven't changed. You're still skulking around in caves.
Well, I guess you can take the trog out of the cave, but you...
This is no joke, 𝐿𝐵. No, you can't take the cave out of the Trog, because your kind never came out for a fair fight.
Oh. You don't want a fair fight,
𝐿𝐸𝐿 said, his voice no longer raised, but low and menacing. Why? I demanded, even though his words sent ice up and down my spine. Why should we fear you? You said yourself you're a species incapable of harm.
Things change. Species evolve.
More ice went through my spine as I thought of what could happen if the Trogs ever decided they wanted more than free room and board. Here were these hulking, powerful, intelligent creatures sharing a group mind. What's more, they were everywhere, in all our homes.
And the thing about evolution,
𝐿𝐸𝐿 went on,
is that it's not a slow, gradual process like most people think. No. Evolution involves sudden, cataclysmic shifts. Such a shift has long been foretold among my kind through our shared consciousness. For your species' sake, we have sought to hold it off. Alas, for both our kinds, it is not to be. We have received our sign.
Sign? What sign? The white buffalo? Or is Jupiter in line with Mars, or some shit like that?
Nothing so dramatic. Merely the appearance of the Harbinger.
Harbinger? The look 𝐿𝐸𝐿 shot me then sent ice not just up my spine, but through my soul. I froze solid. What? I whispered. Why are you looking at me like that? I'm just some guy. And sure as hell nobody special. You can't be talking about me. But he was talking about me. I was the Harbinger. Me, Larry Jacobs. Just some guy who does odd jobs for a living and chases tail in his spare time. But I had been foretold in prophecy. I never knew prophecy could be so screwed up.
Never said you were special,
said 𝐿𝐸𝐿.
but you do happen to be from another universe, as I'm sure you figured out by now. Did you know the site of your drum circle sits on an ancient power spot, very well known among my kind? What it comes down to is you're the only human in this world not imbued with eons and eons of mind-numbing influence by my species. You're the only one who's fully awake.
So I'm like the Buddha or something. How's it feel to live with a celebrity? 𝐿𝐸𝐿 grunted.
I must admit, I never thought the Harbinger would be such a putz.
Hey!
And yet, putz or not, you have the power to awaken other humans. Millions of years of history are about to slam shut, and a new era is about to begin. Species shall rise against species. There shall be weeping and gnashing of teeth, and blood shall flow. Would you like some more coffee?
𝐿𝐸𝐿 said you could take the Trog out of the cave, but you couldn't take the cave out of the Trog. Well, I was pissed off and determined that I damn well would take the cave out of the Trog. I'd alert humans to a certain little fact that had been staring them in the face since the dawn of time. They were sharing the planet and their homes with another intelligent species. Trogs didn't build anything. or cure diseases, or chauffeur people around. All they ever did for us was serve us the occasional cup of coffee, while we humans provided them with food, shelter, hot showers. Now it was damn sure time they cleaned up their act, got jobs, and pulled their own weight. I began my campaign grassroots style, talking to people about troglodytes. I never really thought about them before was a typical reaction, to which I'd almost shout, well, wake up and think. There's no need to wait for UFOs to spew out ETs. We've got intelligent aliens among us right now, I pointed out to everyone who would listen. And who knows what they're up to? I wrote articles. I made phone calls, lots of phone calls, to politicians, universities, friends and acquaintances. I got on the internet and started chat rooms and blogs. I didn't mention that I happened to be from a trog-free alternate universe, but I did say what 𝐤𝐤𝐿 had told me about a cataclysmic change coming. What would happen if your troglodyte turned on you right now? I asked in my online posts. I appeared on cable access after penning The Trog Who Talked for an online magazine. My fame grew. Then agents of the Oprah Winfrey Show, still airing in this universe, contacted me about appearing on the show along with 𝐤𝐿. I jumped at the chance. Everything happened faster than I could have anticipated. I had provided the spark, and now a fire was raging all over America, all over Europe, all over Asia. People began talking about trogs, and even talking to trogs. The trogs, for the most part, remained reticent, but there was a definite shift in the way in which they interacted with humans. Wariness mixed with curiosity. My phone rang off the hook with people wanting to speak with the Trog Man. It seemed 𝐤𝐿 was right. I was the harbinger foretold in prophecy. But I was too obsessed with my crusade to stop and think through the consequences. Hey, I'm a man of action, what can I say? 𝐤𝐿 and I crossed paths, but he declined any conversational gambit I threw his way, and invariably whenever I tried to cajole him, the phone would ring, or there'd be a knock at the door, or something, and we'd go our separate ways. What is he thinking? I wondered. Is he mad at me? Why would he be mad? All I'm doing is undermining the entire survival strategy of his people. Despite his supposed intelligence, 𝐤𝐿 rarely missed an episode of the Jerry Springer Show. And so one morning I sat with him in front of the tube, determined once again to get him talking. Jerry's topic for the day? Women who have sexual attractions to troglodytes. Troglophiles. Are these people sick? Jerry asked the viewing audience. You decide right after this. Cut the commercial.
Things will never be the same.
You got that right. Oprah wants us on her show. You know what that means? Fame and fortune, buddy. Fame and fortune.
I'm not talking about for you and me, Larry. I'm talking about our two species. I'm talking about the future of life on this planet. But I suppose that pales to insignificance compared to the getting laid potential all this has for you.
Then 𝐤𝐿 walked out on Jerry Springer and I. I had to admit, he had a point. All this notoriety probably could get me laid. With my quirky new celebrity status, it only took a few quick phone calls to get not one, but two young lovelies over to my place for supper and libations. They were both ladies I had entertained before, or rather their counterparts back in the old home universe. I'd never before gotten anywhere with either, but something magical was happening on this night, and they were actually competing for my attention all through supper and dessert. 𝐤𝐿, meanwhile, kept to himself on the back porch. After our delightful dining experience, we adjourned to the living room with wine coolers. Mona flicked on the TV while Chastity sat down next to me, almost in my lap. Mona flung herself down on my other side and suggested we watch a DVD. I started to list the flicks I had lying about when Chastity cut me off, saying,
No, a movie.
giving the word a mischievous twist. And Mona,
You know, the ones you keep hidden away somewhere?
"Oh, yeah, that kind of movie," I said, and both girls giggled and finished their wine coolers. At this moment, it was clear things were headed in a Penthouse Letters sort of direction. Alas, I was cut off from paradise by 10 seconds. I had selected a raunchy but tasteful movie and was just about to switch the television over to DVD mode when the news blurb came on. The segment concerned some white trash hick who killed the trog that had been inhabiting his trailer home.
Damn dirty trog.
He growled to a reporter, reminding me of that famous scene in Planet of the Apes.
Never paid no rent, never did a damn thing to earn his keep. And I seen it, I and my wife. I finally got sick and tired of it. Blew the damn thing to Kingdom Come.
Some hard-faced woman behind him stepped forth and said,
We had us another one, living off in the cellar. We done sent it on its way, yes we did. Better not come back either.
They cut back to the commentator. "No charges are being filed," he reported dryly. No charges? For murder? The network immediately launched into related stories of troglodyte hate crimes and anti-trog groups. Then they splashed my picture across the screen and started in about how the landslide of hate had begun with the Trog Man. Mona and Chastity giggled over seeing my picture on the screen, but they were also getting miffed because I wasn't letting them start the DVD. Then a horrible, sick feeling rushed over me, and I didn't want to even look at their faces anymore, let alone other parts of them. I grabbed the DVD and I hurled it against my living room wall. Any and all amorous mood died right then. Seconds later, Mona and Chastity were stomping out my front door and out of my life. Hell with them. And my house fell to being as quiet as a troglodyte.
How do I look?
A voice asked. I opened my eyes with the severest reluctance. It was 6:13 a.m. according to my bedside clock, a time of day that did not exist in my world. But now a wide, imposing figure in a three-piece suit hovered over me, asking how he looked.
The suit. I made it myself. For Oprah.
I rubbed sleep from my eyes.
Very dashing, Geff. A Star is Born. Now, let me get back to sleep.
But just as my head hit the pillow again, that news flash returned to haunt me.
Hey, wait, Geff. Did you happen to catch the news last night?
News?
Gefflink didn't have to watch TV to find out. Troglodytes, with their psychic connection, can teleconference with each other anytime they choose. He had merely to tune in on the worldwide hubbub going on now that every gun-toting Nimrod with an axe to grind was deciding that damn dirty trogs were the root of all evil. Geff's face clouded over, and I knew we would not be doing the Oprah show. In just 6 months, I had changed the world, but not in any way I could be proud of. My phone rang off the hook until I disconnected it. So then reporters began showing up at my door. Trogs were constantly on the news now, victims of abuse, victims of crime. "I'm so sorry," I kept saying to Geff, because what the hell else could I say? Gefflink would only grunt, shrug his massive shoulders, and grumble something like,
Well, you're the harbinger. Guess it was to be expected.
or,
Don't sweat it, Larry. Your destiny just dragged you along.
I would like to believe that. I had ruined a good thing the humans and trogs had going on for like a gazillion years. And all Geff could say was, "Don't sweat it"? This new universe was turning ugly, and I wanted out. I decided it was damn sure time to go back the way I had come. My work here was finished. When I arrived at the full moon drum site, the ceremonies had already begun. It was a crisp October night, and the bonfire was blazing. People were dancing in frenzies, intent on escaping the confines of their left brains, even if only for a night. A large group of troglodytes, including 𝐿𝐸, stood placidly off by themselves. I asked what he was doing there.
It has been decided that a number of us should travel to your universe.
What for? I asked, but he declined to answer. The other trogs regarded me with an unreadable expression. Quite a hasty decision for a race that measures time by the erosion of mountains.
We are evolving, Larry. Suddenly, as our prophecies foretold it.
Evolving, huh?
Yes, evolving. You should try it sometime,
said 𝐸𝐸, then flashed a friendly smile. He held out his massive hand.
Friends?
I shook his hand. Will you stay with me in my universe, 𝐸𝐸? I asked.
You will not be returning to your world.
What?
We cannot allow it.
Another trog grumbled.
The vortex forms.
The trogs gathered about a swirling disturbance in the air. It looked familiar. Oh, yeah, that's what I had staggered through all those months ago.
The Harbinger must stay,
said 𝐸𝐸, more to himself than to me. Maybe he was speaking with some troglodyte prophets for all I knew.
The vortex is nearly complete.
Another trog announced. You can't keep me from going home.
I can,
said 𝐸𝐸.
and I will. We all will. The Harbinger must stay.
The Harbinger must stay.
I stalked off a ways and watched as the first trog stepped through the vortex into my world. Then another passed through, and another, marching steadily. Well, Harbinger or not, I wasn't going to miss my chance to go home. I charged through the thronged trogs for the vortex. 𝐸𝐸 swung his arm in a vicious arc, slamming into my chest. It was like getting hit with a railroad tie. My ribs cracked, and I went down hard. A woman screamed, and within moments a crowd gathered. Nobody had ever seen a trog raise so much as a finger to harm a human. It was unheard of. But as 𝐸𝐸 had said, they were evolving. The trogs continued to march, single file through the vortex. I looked on as the vortex began to fade. 𝐸𝐸 was the last to go. Before stepping through, he turned and looked at me one final time.
Goodbye,
he said. Several troglodytes remained after the portal closed. One of them picked up an earth drum and pounded out a rhythm. Then all the troglodytes began to dance.
Thank you for tuning in to tonight's episode of Fright Night Radio. If you enjoyed our story, please give us a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to our channel so you enjoy a frightful new tale every Friday night. Pleasant dreams.